We're moving from SEO to AEO, and if you're not on AEO, man, your brand, your company, your startup is suffering.
This somewhere completely shifts how you would approach an AEO or a GEO strategy.
So I think those are the four analytical things that need to form the basis of any person trying to figure out how to use AEO.
We are now getting into the territory from owned media to more of earned media.
And this is where Hansel and Gretel's story becomes a really important metaphor for it. How does a young, hotshot professional like yourself, who's ambitious and growth-oriented, actually look at AEO in these times? Is there something around the world of Hansel and Gretel and fairy tales that can actually help you? For all those people who are young enough not to remember this as a fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel have some amazing lessons for you to do some better AEO.
So imagine you're on Google and you're searching for some topic. For example, you want to know the latest musical concerts happening in Goa or in New York, right? How would you search for them?
I'll tell you how I used to search for them, because I know that our behavior has changed. But how I used to search for them was, obviously, it was event driven. Okay, the family wants to go on a holiday. They're pestering me for what we're going to do this Diwali. And then what I intend to do is look at, okay, so I'll never go to Bing. I'll never go to any other place. I'll go to Google and I'll start searching like interesting holiday destinations in Goa that are undiscovered, right? Because I've been to Goa, so I'll just get some responses. Some of them will be sponsored, some of them will be not sponsored. I look at the most promising link in the non-sponsored variety, because I know that the sponsored variety is not really worth it. So I'm just giving you my behavior as a consumer, right? Then I'll go and maybe click on a link, try to seems interesting. They're talking of mountains and waterfalls in Goa. Let me check. So I'll check that. I'll say, but the hotel doesn't seem too very, not too good. So I'll go back, or maybe I'll search. And by about 5 to 10 minutes, I'll be very confused. After that confusion, what I will end up doing is maybe going on WhatsApp, calling some people who have done something like this, maybe throw this question out on maybe some other social media, then go back to Google. And this whole thing will make me feel very virtuous about myself, because I've spent so many cognitive cycles trying to hunt for some holiday in Goa. And then the kids say, we don't want to go to Goa, we want to go to Konkan. And I start the whole goddamn process again.
So basically, you've spent a lot of time doing something that is completely a waste of time because of the search. Yeah. So, but just taking a step back,
hold on. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
So if I have to ask you, how would you search for a Goa trip on LLM maybe in today's day and age? What will you do?
Yeah, so LLM makes things quite easier. Like I would, first of all, I would think, okay, I have these many days for a Goa trip. These are the concerts that might be happening. What are my interest areas? Do I like to party? Do I like to do the scenery? Then I would put all of that, the chitta into the LLM, whatever I'm using, Claude or GPT or whatever. I would give it the context about myself, what the kind of stuff that I like, the number of days that I have for a vacation, and what are my target things that I absolutely have to do. And based on that, then the LLM would probably give me the entire itinerary in a matter of seconds. So I think this entire process gets shortened immediately by like half an hour maximum, right? And then
okay, so what do you do though? What do you do when things don't go your way on an LLM? Because I'm sure that sometimes they don't, right?
Yeah. So then it becomes very conversational, which is something that LLMs are known for, right? All of my, it will be a proper discussion, like a brainstorming session. It will be if you and I are planning a Goa trip together, then you would have some preferences, I would have some preferences, and we would just sit probably over a bottle of beer and be discussing, okay, these are the things that I want to do, definitely don't want to do, maybe check out an Airbnb or whatever. So I would have similar kind of conversations with the LLM, where I'm assuming that LLM is a person that I'm talking to, and it would be a soundboard, basically.
I think that everything except the beer is going to work for you, Janvi. I don't think AI has reached such a stage of beer. But okay, so the way in which I would search, I think that I'm putting in a huge amount of effort from an SEO perspective, and you seem to be putting in a huge amount of effort, but in explaining yourself first.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. But before we go into that, right, how the inputs have shifted, let us look at how we used to search on or how we search on both of these platforms. Like what has drastically shifted when it comes to Google search versus an LLM search. Now, for example, if you had to put the search query into Google, that you have this entire context that you're planning for Goa or whatever, like XYZ city, and so for example, you have 2 to 3 days planned for Goa, right?
Yeah.
And you are absolutely sure that perhaps sunburn is happening at the time, right? So what would your search query be like that will help you start with your itinerary?
How to stop my hairstyle from being sunburnt in Goa? I think that's the way to go for me. But the fact is,
that jokes.
Well, the main thing I would say is that I am it is a very fragmented in retrospect,
Yeah.
the searching on Google is a very fragmented, painful process because I'm having a conversation with myself. And the problem with having a conversation with yourself is that it's definitely not as effective as having a conversation with my therapist, which is in the in the LLM land. So it means that actually the consumer journey has kind of changed, because what tends to happen is that a lot of the consumer journey in used to be like in my own head, but
Hmm.
now I'm putting it out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
with an LLM. What do you think?
Yeah, so basically, because Google allows you, I mean, you can put a number of words into it, but at the end of the day, it's the effective number of words, which is an average of 6 words, that Google efficiently gives you a response. Now, for example, if I was doing the search query on Google or Bing or whatever, I would get a paper and a pencil, and then I would start writing. That for the first will be the dates of sunburn, then will be the hotels around sunburn, then the location of the sunburn. This will be my third query. Now, based on this, the answer to the third query, then I would search the hotels around it or the sceneries around it, right? Or the places to visit around it. So all in all, there's around 10 to 15 search queries happening for just understanding what all I can do. And then I would sit on it with that pen and paper and decide, okay, how much time, what timing is the museum open, and all of that stuff, right? So
And
that is a lot of
Janavi,
conversation.
you are in an organized person who is having a pen and paper. Okay, now there are a lot of us amongst us who are more impulsive, who are not people who have pen and paper, who are doing it on a mobile between meetings, going on some drive somewhere because the kids have pestered you enough. So and the fact is that I will definitely give up, not go about it in a structured way. The thing that you started your dialogue with was that, oh, I know that the length of the search query is going to make a difference to my search results. Hardly 1% of the population will know something like this, right? I'm not
Yeah.
going to think about, oh, the length of my search query, right? And that is the frustration that I have.
And I think this is what presents the biggest challenge to the people who were doing an SEO, right? Now if you look at how SEO used to happen, you had to it was basically you had to go very broad, right? You go broad with the search results, with your keywords, and then slowly and slowly you filter down to the long tail keywords. So long tail keywords are always a very high intent kind of keywords. Now for example, my search query about trip to Goa will probably show me things like make my trip, or places to visit, etc. So these are very broad terms. Now, when I'm looking specifically for the hotel, which in my list will be perhaps the seventh or eighth query, then I'm going into the more long tail kind of keywords, that high intent kind of keywords that SEO specialists actually start ranking for, right? So your entire strategy changes. Now, if we come to how LLMs are performing, right, the input that goes into the LLM. So just like we discussed, it is a lot of conversation, a discussion happening. I'm not really thinking about like what I'm putting in or how I'm putting in. I'm not concerned about the words that go into it. I'm literally just talking to an LLM the way I would talk to you or the way I would talk to my mom, right? An average search query for an LLM is 25 words, which is a huge number of
Yeah,
words to rank for, right?
yeah.
So this somewhere completely shifts how you would approach an AEO or a GEO strategy, where you are no longer concerned about the broad queries at all. It is always the long tail keywords that you're ranking for, because you know that the moment a person is going to a GPT to search for something, it is already a very high intent kind of an event that is happening, right?
Yeah, you said the magic words. Everything is high intent, or it is the intent that you intend to have when you're actually doing the thing. So therefore, I always think, with LLMs, the core soul sapping thing as far as Google and any other search engine is concerned is, why search when you can find? And the
Hmm.
funny thing about finding is that you're finding yourself better. When you're typing in those
Yeah.
queries in an LLM, you're giving of yourself. You're kind of contributing to the conversation, because who the hell doesn't like to talk about themselves? They don't want to talk about their goddamn Goa trip, but I am this special person who likes this and that and the
Yeah.
rest of it. And that typically happens wonderfully in a conversation. And I think this is where LLMs are going to beat the living daylights out of any ACO driven search. So
Yeah.
we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already started happening. I mean, the reason that Google has come out with the AI tools or Gemini AI search, the entire
Yeah.
reason for that is that people have shifted completely from Google searches to LLM. It's just easier. It's more efficient. I can have a conversation. Claude will probably ask me some number of questions on what I want to do, why I want to do this, what is a more high priority task for me. If I have just 3 days, do I want to search for a museum, or do I just want to spend my time on beaches, right? So it becomes a lot of conversation happening between the two of us, where I'm figuring myself out along with my itinerary. And this brings us into the territory of the people who are doing the AEO, the people who are doing the GEO. The entire conversation is very closed off between
Yeah.
the LLM and the user, right? I could probably just ask for anything under the sun, right?
Yeah, and by the way, that anything can change. You can always say,
Yes.
now I am in Goa. Okay,
Yeah.
pal, I'm in Goa and maybe the weather has changed, so
Hmm.
I want to go to more museums rather than go have for long walks in the countryside or something like that. And they would know, the LLM would know, because it would connect to your earlier conversations. It would know
Yeah.
exactly. And of course, Google also has an algorithm that will try to fit into most of your thing. But imagine the comfort of the conversation saying, hey, okay, this plan is not working out. I'm in Goa, it's too hot or it's too rainy, and now I want to go to indoor
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Just
suddenly
on that,
the whole
yeah.
thing.
Even if Google does have the recommendations for you, Google is not going to come to know where you are, because I might have searched for Sunburn in Goa at the same time for a concert, for a Coldplay concert in Vienna, right?
Yeah,
So Google will not
yeah,
come to know what I'm doing at that moment. It might know what the weather is, but it won't know my preferences. LLM knows my preference, and we've had this entire long, lamba conversation about what is going on and what next, right? So now this presents a challenge for the people who are so obviously, I mean, let us just establish the base that Google searches are on a declining trend.
sure.
That is a given fact. We don't even need to debate that anymore,
No,
right? So now
no.
comes the challenge: how do you make your product or your offerings? For example, if you're a tour and travel agency who's making plans for Goa, or perhaps your Airbnb who's lending
Yeah.
out the rooms for the Sunburn Festival. So how do you start ranking for AEO or GEO so that your name comes out during the conversation? Because what we have seen, even if your URL might be ranking number one on Google, GPT is never going to mention you. It's just going to mention what all can be done, but it's not never going to mention your name until a user specifically asks for it, and a user never specifically asks for anything.
Okay. So I think that we've spoken a lot. So maybe if I take a step back and kind
Yeah.
of try to analyze it, I
Hmm.
think it is certainly more discovery driven,
Yeah.
because it is certainly more conversational. It is certainly more as if it's like a bit of a collaboration between you and the AI, right?
Yeah.
So it is certainly there, and the intent is absolutely high a lot of times. So I think those are the four analytical things that need to form the basis of any person trying to figure out how to use AEO. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. For the first time ever, discoverability on a marketing funnel, discoverability is on the same threshold as conversion, right?
Yes.
You're not just ranking for either awareness or conversion. You're not paying ads for conversions. Your discoverability means your conversions, because the discoverability factor is so less on an
This is
LLM.
brilliant. See, what you're saying is so fundamental, because so far digital marketing has focused on the bottom of the funnel because that's more measurable.
Yeah.
Now, what we are trying to figure out is, oh, wow, I can actually have an impact, and this you can showcase within your company as well. So, but Janavi, I have a question. Like, what
Yeah.
do you think makes these conversations so easily possible? Is there something that we need to understand from that perspective? Like, why are these conversations that we are having with LLMs so easily possible and so smooth?
As a user, like you were talking
Yeah,
about the input.
yeah, as a
I
user.
don't have to think about what I'm saying, because I understand that an LLM is going to understand where I'm coming from. I've
I
already
think
given it a context.
Yeah, no, I think the main critical, aspect of it is coming from a database of conversations.
Hmm.
Like for example, if I look at all of these things, you have your Reddits and you have your X of the world, and so they're forming a database. And where is this database coming from? It is coming not from the websites of the world, but it's coming
Yeah,
from conversations. So I
yeah.
think the database itself makes a massive difference. What do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time where community building isn't just a distribution platform, right?
Yeah,
The database that you mentioned, most of the LLMs, they are taking their data from platforms like Quora, Reddit, and
yeah,
X, and these were
yeah,
one of the most underrated platforms ever, right?
yes,
Anybody who's trying to do SEO, I mean, I've seen startups that are like a day old trying to get traffic onto their website through SEO. Right, that
yes,
is not going to work anymore, because just
no.
like I said, even if your URL is ranking number one, it's not going to make any difference on an LLM, because the LLM is never going to name you. But what is going to name you is the conversations that are happening around you or around your brand on these UGC kind of platforms, where it is all user generated, where people are talking to you. We are now getting into the territory from owned media to more of earned media,
Yeah,
right?
that's beautifully put. I think that I would also add maybe citations
Yeah,
that are easy to find, and I would also look at, okay, so here is the conversation that humanity has had about things, and now I'm adding to this conversation. So I think it's a combination of the databases that already exist, which are around community and conversations, and then you are kind of giving your own input, saying, okay, this is me and my specific angle. And I think the LLMs do an awesome job of connecting the wisdom of humanity in a conversational tone to an individual,
yeah.
which was the big flaw in SEOs. So this is where we are, right?
So when we were studying for our MBA or branding, right, we always used to study this term that brand management or branding is for the consumer. Over the years, branding has become more about logos and typographies and etc. What the founder feels.
Sure.
Brand building became, am I active on social media? Am I doing whatever enough blogs? What my
Yeah.
website is like, right? For the first time, from the advent of the LLMs, brand building is actually the echo of what the consumer says about you. It is no longer what you say about the brand, about your brand. It is what the others who might have dealt with your brand say about you. Now, for example, you look at the Reddit community, it is very, like we say, muffet, right? You are completely anonymous, nobody knows your name, and you are
Yeah.
at perfect liberty to say anything and everything that you want, which is
Yeah.
perhaps why LLM still consider Reddit as one of the most authentic sources. The same comes on Quora, because you're not building a professional network unlike on LinkedIn. So you can openly talk about what you feel, right? So for the first time, this concept of brand building has taken a completely transparent shift of what it was actually supposed to be from the Partler era. Now, the biggest tenet of brand building is your storytelling, and LLMs have brought storytelling into such a perfect picture, because to rank for an AEO, right, for a conversation where you don't know what the conversation is going to be about, there is no perfect set of words. There are no keywords. I am not talking to an LLM in certain keywords. There is no fixed vocabulary for talking to an LLM. I can literally just talk to it in SMR, right? And how are you going to rank for it? Now, in this, when you don't have a particular set of keywords that you can perhaps get from SEMrush or Ubersoft or whatever,
Yeah.
then what comes to your aid? And I believe, like, storytelling is the one thing that can actually help you understand the consumer behavior properly, so you can rank
So
for it.
let's build on this.
Yeah.
Wonderful thing that you just said. People have shifted from brand image building to brand experience building,
Mm.
right? So brand experience is the collective experience that you have as a consumer with a specific brand. And I think that's a big shift. And brand experience is all about sharing experiences, sharing conversations, which then build up into stories, and therefore storytelling becomes incredibly important. What we were doing so far was we were only looking at logical ways of kind of reaching the goal, but human beings are not logical. They believe in magic. They believe in the magic of conversations. So therefore your whole thing is more fluid, and I think LLMs are reflecting a new reality, or rather the reality that already existed, but we never have found a way to crack it. We are now finding that storytelling is becoming really, really important.
And I think this is the perfect place to bring in Hansel and Gretel and their breadcrumbs, because that's exactly what's happening in the world right now, right?
Well, thank you, thank you. Now this is where the dad stories come in, because most of us don't, the young professional who's ambitious and growth oriented. I don't think he gives a rat's ass about Hansel and Gretel and a fairy tale. But the fairy tale is interesting because there were these two kids who were lured into having some great food in some cabin by a witch who wanted to basically cook them for lunch or breakfast or whatever. And she was luring them. But I think Gretel, the woman, obviously the girl, was more intelligent. So what she did was that she had a piece of bread in her hand, and she kept chucking stuff out from the bread till the time that she reached the cabin.
Yeah.
So that is where the breadcrumb story comes from. And actually a lot of people, when they're using website terminology, they keep talking of breadcrumbing, but without really understanding what those breadcrumbs are. That is the Hansel and Gretel story. This is why Hansel and Gretel were found by those villagers who came and got the witch and gave her due. And that is pure play storytelling. That is pure play navigation. Why do I say that? It is because if I look at the storytelling, the breadcrumbing is happening from the person who's entering the information into the LLM, and the breadcrumbing has already happened by the community. And this is where Hansel and Gretel's story becomes a really important metaphor for it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, agreed. So everything that you are putting through your brand, right? The words out there, your own owned media, your own blogs, the way you write the articles, the kind of questions that you ask in an article. Now, for example, when we were doing SEO, the questions used to be about headings, or the whatever the description that goes into it, or as much as you can cover in one article, right? That
Yeah.
would give you the high ranking keywords. Now with AEO, it's about question under question under question under question, because an LLM will want to search for or cite the questions that are the most unique questions out there. Now, how can you do that? This is all breadcrumbing strategy. You're going from
Beautiful.
bottom up, right?
Yeah.
It is the smallest crumb that you see, and then you keep on following the trail. That this is what the user might ask for. This is what the user might ask for. It might happen across your communities, or might happen across your blog articles. But this is all breadcrumbs. It is perhaps one product line. It is one tool that you're talking about, and you're building an entire journey around that tool, where every kind of query that the consumer might have in their mind when they're going to an LLM, where they're so ready to purchase or convert, would possibly think about, right? So this is exactly a Hansel Gretel's breadcrumbing that's happening, and you as a person who is doing an AEO or a GEO has to follow that breadcrumb to understand if you will be able to rank in that cabin.
So the days of the vision and mission statement, which is just a bunch of words which are strung together, just trying to make a lot of sense with a lot of keywords thrown in, is gone. Honestly, it is gone, and it is being replaced by what you call beautifully bottom-up conversations that lead to storytelling. But Janavi, the question is, how can this help build a brand? I think that is where we probably need to take this conversation next. Fine, we've understood Hansel and Gretel, we've understood the storytelling, we've understood brand experience, we've understood the analytics side of things, the collaboration, the discovery, all of that. But now let's put the rubber to the road. How can this help you build a brand? What do you think?
Now is the time when you, as a person who is building your brand or doing an AEO for your brand, taps into the reptilian mind of reptilian brain of the consumer, right? You are not looking at a logical search pattern. You're looking at the emotional pattern of a person. When I am doing an LLM search, I'm basically investing all of myself. I am telling the LLM everything there is to know about me. So now what we used to search for, or what we used to rank for, was the output. In a search engine, right? It always used to be about the destination of where you want the consumer to go. Now it is not about destination anymore. Now it is about who is your audience, what will it resonate with, what is your audience feeling. It is about the emotional needs of the audience rather than just the external catalysts or the end
Beautiful. Let me add to this, right? So evolutionary biology becomes really critical for us. So as you correctly said, it's more like an impulse, and it's connected with emotions rather than logic. And in Google or any other search, we were forced to use logic first, which was the basic break point for any conversations. So here what is happening is that you're actually more connected with your own biology, okay? And you're more connected with the way in which you normally think. So you're starting off with emotions. But by the way, Janavi, it's not necessarily that you're only stuck to your reptilian brain. What tends to happen is that conversations flow like this, like the conversation that you and I are having right now. It moves from emotion, but then it goes into logic country, then it again moves to emotions, and it goes, so it keeps traversing between these different parts of our brain that we have got, which is why really critical for us to understand evolutionary biology. It is really critical for us to connect this to the kind of conversations that we have. We also have to understand how tribal stuff gets played into it, like how many other people have gone to Goa, for example, and what do they think, becomes really critical for us to understand. So this is where behavioral economics, evolutionary biology, psychology, all of those things which have been kind of shunned by people seeking logic in brand building are coming back to the fore. I'm not saying logic is gone or done and dusted, because you do keep moving from different parts of your brain, but you've got to understand how do these breadcrumbs actually move within your head.
Yeah. Now, let us take a hypothetical case where we are a tour and travel company, perhaps making an itinerary for Goa, right? For say a 5-day package for Goa. How would we go about building our brand with evolutionary biology principles?
How do we go about building our own brand with evolutionary biology principles? Okay, so the first thing that we've got to figure out is that brands are built bottom up, okay, from conversations that humanity has already had about the subject, not your brand maybe, but about the subject. That's how you start. You also start understanding how will conversations typically happen, how have conversations typically happened so far, and then you've got to role play those conversations, figure it out as to what kind of responses you're going to get from the AI agent, and figure out how do I reflect this in my ecosystem, in my digital ecosystem. So am I doing that only for my website? Probably people don't even visit websites anymore. Am I doing that on my social media? Am I putting it up on Reddit or X? Because that's, sure, you got to do all of that, but the way in which you do this is not logically, like stuff these keywords here and stuff these high intent keywords here. Those days are gone.
Yeah. I think this is where the terms that we used to hear, the terms that we never ended up using anywhere else, right? Digital ethnography or semiotic analysis or actual cultural decoding. This is where you're actually trying to understand how a person or how your target audience is having conversations. You go on Reddit, you are never going to see somebody just harping on about, or even using some blog links. They'll just be giving their opinions. So right now, this is the one man's opinion that actually matters for you, and you bring that one man, you collectively bring in 100, 500 more people, and you have your set of conversations, and that is your database on how perhaps another n+1 user is going to have a conversation with an LLM. This is how you rank. This is how you build your brand, right? The brand building is never going to happen around your name, but you have to make sure that the brand building is happening in such a way that your name becomes the credibility factor that is used in these very candid conversations on social media in the user generated content era.
Beautiful. So if I am a young professional who's ambitious and growth oriented, I would not completely forsake my logic, but
Yeah.
what I would certainly do is add a bit of this conversational magic. So how do I do that? I have to pay attention to conversations in real life and the way in which they happen. I have
Mm.
to understand the nuances of what people mean when they say what they say. So there is a lot of understanding emotionality and understanding conversations and seeing how they replicate themselves on stuff like Reddit. And also, if you guys aren't on Reddit or Quora or whatever, please be there. First of all, understand how those conversations are happening, understand who those big contributors are, understand the way in which the community goes for it. So that's number
Mhm.
one. Number two is see conversations in real life and see how they unfold. See how
Yeah.
people reach their goals through conversations, because this kind of stuff is more connected to the success of your brand in tomorrow's,
Yeah,
in tomorrow's landscape.
this is the era of the chai sutta conversation where imagine just five people sitting in a room getting high and perhaps talking about things. That's exactly how people have conversations with LLMs. Nobody is watching. It is just you lashing your brain out, right? So the in that room, the way the conversations will be happening, or the way you talk to a very close friend over a cup of tea or a bottle of beer, that's exactly how people converse with an LLM. So for the first time, you are no longer talking to a spider, you are talking to an actual human being, and that is how you rank your brand.
Chai, sutta, getting high, bottle of beer. Janavi, it is clear that you're in a different time and place that I am. But I think
I'm
we
going to
get
Goa.
the gist of we get the gist of it, get the gist of your story. We understand you're going to Goa and you're going to give us the biggest input on SEO, SEM, and AEO, AEM, and AEM, AM, AEO, AEO,
And
and
GEO,
GEO.
whatever the new
My
term.
God. Okay, all right. So there we go. Let's stop right here while we're ahead.